This is a webinar on Autodesk Construction Cloud markups and digital documentation review. My name is Charles Sanchez. I am a senior implementation consultant. So my background, actually, I've been in the industry for over 2 decades. I'm a licensed architect, and I have quite a long time working in the industry as an architect and a consultant for sustainability and digital engineering. For the past 4 or 5 years, I've been focusing a lot on digital transformation, cloud-based tools for construction, design, and collaboration adoption. And I worked for Autodesk for over 3 years prior to joining my current position here as an implementation consultant. And I also have some experience working in Southeast Asia and research in Singapore mostly. So today I want to focus on a little bit of an introduction to why we're talking about these topics. So the first thing is many of you are familiar with these tools, and many of you are not. For those who are not familiar, the industry is going through a process right now of transformation where there is a kind of a second generation of CAD adoption and BIM adoption, where we are not just talking about modeling and drafting building information, but we're talking also about the collaboration aspect. Now, the process of construction and design is very complex from the conception of any project to the execution, but we're going to break it down here in 4 parts, which is design, planning, building, and operation. These are the 4 stages that Autodesk Construction Cloud focuses on and offers tools for. Now, there are certain tools that are very focused on execution of tasks. And for example, in this case, what I'm showing you right now is a transmittal, which is a very simple workflow that allows you to share data from one point to another point in ACC. There are, for all of these tools, there are pretty much 2 processes. The first one is the configuration aspect, where you have a project admin setting up all the tools, creating all the information layouts, creating all the information containers, allowing people to access this information, restricting this information to some of them. And then you have the execution, where you have individuals collaborating in the process. For today's topic, the configuration aspect actually is very minimal, because what we're talking about is execution. We're talking about having the data, having access to the data already, and executing certain tools in the data. And that's the reason why today's webinar is very, very focused on markups and review process. And from there, we take it to other tools like issues, for example, that require some configuration, but we are not going to focus on that configuration today. We're going to focus on how the markups and documentation reviews tools are allowing us to expand on these other tools within ACC to achieve a very, very powerful level of collaboration and execution. Now, again, for those who are very new to ACC, this is not an introduction webinar. This is not a webinar where I'm going to introduce you to what is ACC. This is a webinar where I'm assuming all of you know a little bit about ACC. So ACC, one of the main tools that is mostly adopted by people from the beginning is the Docs tool that you're looking at here. Now, the Docs tool is pretty much a platform for management of information. And if you notice here, you're going to see that reviews, transmittal, issues, reports are pretty much some of the tools that Docs offers you to work with that data. But here you are not looking at the data. You actually don't have any visibility to any of the files. You will have to click on one of the files to look at it. And that's what we're going to do later. So there are certain workflows, again, that require certain implementation, certain, let's call it arrangements or configuration. For example, a review process where you submit a file for review. Now, in your case, it could be that you are going to be part of the submit process, that you're going to be asked to review a document. And this is where the process you might be involved could start. Someone, a PM, a collaborator, a third party might send you a request for review of a document. And that's what we're going to do in a moment. So you need to understand where does that coming from? Well, that happens because someone has a document file that they need you to provide input on. Now, there are certain rules also for the document management. I'm going to dwell too much in this, but some of those rules depend on the project allocation, where the files are going to be, how those files are going to manage. Maybe you don't need to worry about it so much, but just be aware that's something you need to consider when managing files. Now, the visualization aspect and the status of the information. And again, this is a little bit of theory before I jump into the practical. So every stage of the information in the process can be very clearly defined. It could be that the information we're in is a work in progress. Usually we're talking about design work. It could be a preconceptual design, pre-construction design, where changes are going to happen very often and they're well received. It's not a stage where things are settled and defined. It's a stage where things happen. Again, our revision tools, our digital markups play an important role in this aspect. Now, the shared stage of the information, which we see here, the shared stage of the information is when the information leaves the silos. It could be an individual, it could be a group of professionals with the same background that start collaborating between each other. And I call this leaving the silos because this is the part where the information doesn't belong to you anymore, it's being sent to someone else. And again, markups, reviews, that kind of feedback, digital feedback is very important here too. Maybe not at the impact that it could have in work in progress within a team, but it does have an impact. And the next stage is the publish stage, where things are pretty much authorized, pretty much are already being reviewed. So in order to allow this stage to happen, a series of reviews, a series of communicates have to happen here. And then eventually the information is going to be archived. I know this is a little bit abstract, but again, these are the standards for information management. This is pretty much based on ISO 19650. And that's what is so important because companies across around the world are working with these standards. Now, unfortunately, these standards that we're looking at here are not happening everywhere. A lot of companies are still trying to reach that level. I don't know if I'm talking to any of you who are already going through this process or already achieved this process. But in the meantime, what we have right now is that companies are trying to achieve a common data environment. Many of them don't have it. Many of them don't have a version control process where one file is unique and has multiple versions. They sometimes work with multiple files, which can get very messy. Sometimes the review of the file just relies on who can use the platform. Now I'm going to explain this topic quickly. What that means is if I have a file that I'm working on, I'm an architect, I'm working on a project, and I send a file to someone in this call, and I need that person to provide feedback. So many times happens that that file relies on your ability to navigate the platform, the desktop application. Let's talk about Revit, for example. If I send you a Revit file, you're gonna have to have Revit installed, you have to pay for a license, you have to be able to navigate and provide feedback. This is something we want to avoid. We don't want this to happen. And again, it falls into, do I have the right tool to see the model? Sometimes we ended up with companies that export the files or transfer the file to a different format, and that affects the quality. We don't want this to happen. That's why review tools are so important. We want to play in the field so everyone is reviewing the same information in the same format. And again, the issues management and creation, the follow-up items many times are just lost. And the reason why this happens is because we don't have ways to trigger new actions. So when a document is being sent to you, you perform your review, there is no way for you to say, okay, this is what I want to happen next. This is something that we're going to focus on. So looking at from the current process, this is going to be our approach today. And again, Autodesk Construction Cloud solves these issues by providing all these tools that are so diverse that we really cannot focus on all of them. We're going to focus on one of them. We're going to jump on this. This is folder structure. So we're going to jump to this in a moment. For now, what I want to do is I want to share my screen with the project that I have here. So I like to have a very collaborative environment. So what I'm going to ask all of you is if during this call you have a question, please don't wait to the end. We're going to have Q&A allocated about 10 minutes at the end, but feel free to jump in. I think it will be more valuable if you can participate. So for those who are not familiar, I'm going to increase the size of this so you can see it more clearly. This is the platform Autodesk Construction Cloud. And as you see, it's not a software, it's a URL. I can open this on my phone if I want to. I can send a link to this to someone in WhatsApp. And if they have ACC and they have a mobile device, they can just go and see exactly what I'm looking at. What I have here is a folder structure that is not the ideal. It's actually a demo structure where I have multiple folders and I have some samples too. So I'm going to stop a little bit talking about the platform. I'm going to avoid a lot of content because of the time that we have. But what I'm going to explain right now is that in files, you're going to find all the content. So if you need to think about it in this way, if you look at Autodesk Construction Cloud as a platform, your files are going to be, your content, your information is going to be here. And that's it, in files. The rest of the tools, I'm going to move my bar here quickly. So the rest of the tool you see here, reviews, transmittals, issues, reports. These are execution tools. That means, and again, this is a language that I like to use to specify. That means that you do things with this. You trigger an action. As we saw a moment ago, sometimes it is impossible to just request what you want next. You need to send an email. So these tools that we have here, and there are many others, allow you to avoid sending an email because you don't do that. What you do is you trigger an action and you say, I want this to happen. And that's why these tools are created here. And then what you have here in terms of members, bridge, and settings is pretty much a configuration of the platform. So very, very quickly, an introduction to what you see here. That's what it means. What we want to focus on is where the information is. In this case, again, don't follow this folder structure. This is a sample folder structure that I created. There are many ways of doing this. Sometimes we follow the company's structure. Sometimes we follow an ISO 19650 structure. For me, this is just a discipline-based structure where I have architecture and MEP. Don't think that this is the only solution. There are many of them. I want to show you is that there is one project files, and inside the project folder files, the project files folder, sorry, you can create as many subfolders as you want. And in this case, I have one subfolder for Archi, another subfolder 001, another subfolder inside Consume, and then inside Consume, inside 001, I have two folders that contain the actual data. We don't recommend to have too many subfolders because it becomes a rabbit hole. You don't want that. The ideal is to have 4 subfolders, no more than that. Just a quick note. Now, what happens with the information that I have here? So this information that I have here has pretty much what any team member, any person contributing to the project has been working on. And you are going to see the files listed here. So I'm going to collapse all the folders. That's the main folder, right? And then you have all the information containers. So you won't be able to see any file until you go to a folder and click on it, right? Let me see, some of them are empty because again, this is just a demo. Let me show you. So you can also have Word documents, Office documents. That's not the point, but I just want to show you. Now, what I have here is in the first folder, sample Revit, I have some Revit files. Now, the Revit files here are in 3D. And because Revit allows you to export the project's data, it's not just a model. It allows you also to have 2D drawings. But before I open this file, I want to focus quickly on the attributes aspect. What are the attributes? So if I open my my Windows navigation tool, there is nothing in here. Right? You're going to see all these files. Normally, what you see is a bunch of files with very simple data. You have status, data modified, type, and size. Is the information on the file. But Autodesk Construction Cloud is not like that. Of course, it's going to have information on the size of the file. It's going to have information on the description of the file. It's going to have version, and it's going to have, of course, the title of the file. But what happens here is Autodesk Construction Cloud is going to have what we call metadata or you call attributes. And that is here. When you go to this option here, you're going to see that there is going to be an option for attributes. Attributes is extremely, extremely important because it's going to allow you to allocate information on a file that you can use to organize those files. One of those attributes that you see here, and it's kind of difficult to find, is the one we're going to focus on today. So if you see here, if I take this file, we're going to open attributes again. You're going to see that there is an attribute here that says markup. It's not selected. Now, that markup is here. I'm going to highlight it in red. That's an attribute right there. So what that means is this, very simple. It's information on the file that tells me that something is included or added to that file. The markups you see here are two types. You see there is a line, a curved line, like a freehand line, and there is like a little crown. For those who are old school and remember BIM 360, which is a tool prior to ACC, which is still out there in the market, a very great tool. We used to have, instead of this crown, we used to have a little glove, like a drawing of the earth. And what this tells me here is the first drawing tells me, look at this. So the first drawing here, which looks like this, right, tells me that there is a markup, that someone went here to this drawing and did what we're going to learn how to do today, which is created a markup. So in what situation this is very useful, very convenient. If, let's say, I have 20 drawings here or 20 files, and I ask my team to review them all to provide feedback, before I open the file, I can tell if those files have already markups or not. And I'm going to show you later what this crown means. So this information that we have here, this metadata, these attributes, is related to what we're talking about today. I'm going to jump quickly to one of the files. There are, by the way, there are multiple types of attributes and metadata here that you can turn on, turn off. You can create new ones. So I strongly recommend you to pay attention to this, to try to practice about it, because this is going to allow you to organize your files based on that. So for example, if I open this file, I go directly to the file. And this is the navigation tool. This is the navigation user interface that is going to allow me to see the file. Now, remember a moment ago when I was talking about the way information is shared, the way information is reviewed. And I mentioned one of the current processes is that model review relies on who can use the desktop application if they have it, of course. In this case, it doesn't really matter. You can open this in your phone if you want to. Easy URL is very easy to navigate, very intuitive. You can choose pan and orbit, fit the view, zoom in, zoom out, first person view, whatever you want to do. And the point with this tool is that allows you to review your file. I'm not going to call it drawing, your file. So what do we have here? In this menu on the left side, the sheets and views menu here. Okay, we have a question from someone. I think everyone can see the question. It says, we have large drawings, X reference, aerial photos. Harry Thompson is asking this. I'm gonna put the question here. Well, what I'm showing here right now is a Revit model because my demo is very narrow. You have to understand, I cannot go through all the possibilities, but you can open photos here. You can open very large photos. You can open cloud points too. I love working in point cloud files. That is a scan data from laser scanners and review it here. There are many options to do this. And when you talk about a large file, to be honest, I have seen files that are extremely large, multiple gigabytes of data for Revit, which is not recommendable. But you have a file that is 500 megas, 300 megas, you have no issues about it. But even though we don't recommend to have such a large file, it really depends. And the idea is here, you notice what I have here on top, it says 3D. That means that it's a 3D model. And that's because I'm using the Revit layout. If I had a different file, like Word, for example, it's going to open in a different way. But in this case, I'm focusing only on a Revit file. It could be a CAD file too. If I go here for the 2D drawing version, what I'm going to do here is, I'm going to clean up the drawings. I'm going to switch to the 2D. And here in this case, there is no 2D. That's because of the way the model was exported from Revit. But what I want to focus is on this menu here. I'm going to bring a 2D drawing in a moment. Then you have the levels. You can start navigating the file. You can start navigating all the content. This tool is being designed to be a partner for people modeling in Autodesk products, of course, but that doesn't mean that it's limited to that. And I'm going to show you later. So the first point I want to make is how the tool allows you to see 3D drawings in this case, and how it allows you to navigate those drawings. What I'm going to do is I'm going to close the view. I'm going to exit the viewer. I'm going to go to the next view, to the next drawing, sorry. Right. It's opening the drawing. I'm going to see if there are 2D drawings or not. There are no 2D drawings. There is a 3D model. So I'm going to jump to another file. And again, this is for navigation. There are multiple things you can do here in terms of navigating. You can create a section. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to my other folder, and I'm going to just quickly show you what happens with these Microsoft Office files. You can open them there. So don't feel limited by the tools that you have. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring a file. In this case, what I'm going to do is to take a file from my computer, and I'm going to bring it here. And in that case, there are two options for doing that. The first one is that you can upload a file. You can also publish a file from Revit, or you can just drag the file and bring it here. So I'm going to navigate here without it. Just give me a second while I navigate to find the file that I want to bring and show you what it's like. Okay, so this is the file that I want to open in ACC. And I'm going to show it to you in the Acrobat reader, the PDF reader first. So this is the file that I have. Now, again, I'm explaining this all in the context of my background as an architect. So let's say I have a house and the person who owns the house is asking me to help me design the swimming pool area here and the landscape. So there are multiple ways of doing this. I could just print this out and work on it. I could export this to Revit and work on it. I could even use the Acrobat Reader and work on it just by using some of the tools that we have here very poorly. I could start sketching what I need. But that's not what I want. What I want is to have more tools to do the digital drafting, digital review, and also to keep the file within the project. And that's something that we need to understand. When I share the file in the project, when I keep the file in the project, I'm bringing a high level of confidentiality and protection to that information. While if you change files back and forth, the files are going to be available to anyone who has access to those emails. There is another important aspect. I'm going to first bring the file here. I could just drop it here, right? So I'm dropping the file. And it's telling me that it's a file from my computer, right? 2.8 megabytes PDF file. So I'm going to tell you an experience that I had when COVID happened. I was doing a lot of consulting during COVID, and during the first months of COVID, where people just immediately were asked to stop going to their offices. I had a few companies I was working with in Singapore, Malaysia, and here in Australia. And all of them were struggling with reviewing drawings, just that, reviewing any type of drawings. And the reason is because if you ever work for an architecture firm or engineering firm, usually you have these giant plotters, these giant printers in office, where you can just bring whatever you want. You bring it to a table. Most offices have a giant table in the middle. You bring a red marker and you start making corrections and notes there. Because of COVID, that couldn't happen. So I had many teams who were struggling with this because people were working from home, but they didn't have a printer. They didn't have a giant printer. Even with a regular printer, I saw people putting together 4 pages with Scotch tape so they could have a decent size of the drawing to review it. And when I started introducing digital review of drawing, it became very popular because now people were able to conduct their reviews digitally with more clarity. And it was a pretty much forced situation. They had no choice, but it became very, very successful. So what I'm going to do here is I have a drawing here, right? And I'm going to click on it. And if you notice already, that is a PDF drawing. It's not a model, right? And what you see here is this, there is no 3D option because I'm opening directly a 2D drawing. Most people work with this type of documents for the topic that we're covering today. And the reason is because a lot of companies are still printing this out, reviewing it, and scanning or taking a picture of it, which is a very dangerous way of working. Now, I have my drawing here. By default, which is the difference between opening this drawing in ACC and opening this drawing in Adobe Acrobat, is that here, of course, I have the pages and everything, right? But in ACC, you have the pages to the separation. I'm going to show you what's one of the biggest differences. When I zoom in, the quality remains the same. And I don't know if you can see how I'm clicking in objects. So the drawing is recognized as such. Now, this drawing, actually, I wanted to make this demo more realistic. This is a drawing that was given to me. It's not something that I generated. So this is actually a drawing from a friend. And I asked them if I could have the drawings of the house so I could do this demo. They said it was fine. This is literally a drawing that was given to me. I had no idea when I got the drawing if it was properly done in Revit or AutoCAD. That's a situation you might be in. But in this case, it's not a scanned drawing from an image. This is an actual drawing that was created in a CAD software. So this is the situation you're going to face, probably, where you have a drawing and Autodesk Construction Cloud is going to allow you to touch on those elements of the drawing as you go. But that's not what we want to focus on today. We want to focus on what I do with this. How do I provide feedback to my client on the changes that I want? It could be something very simple. You can even send this to your own client, and the client can tell you just by making changes here. They can tell you what they want. They say, okay, this is too high, right? They can draw a line and tell you this is not what they want. Let's say we're not talking about a professional, we're talking about a client, right? Or they say, no, I don't want gas, I want electrical. I don't want electric, I want gas. People can draw pretty much with the basic tools that you see here on the left. I'm using the market, and I'm going to navigate all these tools one by one. I needed to give you context of these tools today, but to be honest, these tools by themselves are very complex in terms of how much you can do. It's very easy to use them. It's extremely easy to use them. But what you can do with this is incredible. It's very, very, very rich. So I'm going to just quickly navigate through the tools that we have. So we have selection, which is what I used a moment ago, right? And then you can go and select objects. Now, if that object is that you select, remember, you need to always remind yourself, it's a drawing. It's not a model. It's not an element. It's a drawing. You can highlight it. You can touch it, but you cannot move it because it's like if you were working on top of a piece of paper. Now, what you could do, I'm not going to go into this anymore. What you could do is you could measure things. So if I want to go and measure something, I can touch those objects, right? And use them as a reference to measure. Now, in this case, if you notice the bottom, it's not letting me measure anything. And the reason is because I need to set up the measurement settings. In this case, I'm going to use millimeters with a precision of 0. And there is an option for free measurement. I don't like using free measurement. I like to use it with references. I say done, right? And the other thing that you might have to do, again, because as I said, this is a drawing that I received. I didn't create it. And that's most of the scenarios you're going to see is you're going to have to calibrate it. How do you calibrate? You only need one measurement. So if I go here and I touch in this object, when I calibrate, so I'm going to set the scale, 2-point calibration, millimeters. This point to this point. This is one option to calibrate the drawing, right? The other option is, I'm gonna click this again. You need type precision. Select the scale. You can select the scale of the drawing if you have it, right? You can select the units, right? and then you enter. And this is just one of the things that you might have to do, but most of the times we're expecting you not to have to do this because the drawing should come calibrated already if it was generated in Revit. In my case, this drawing was probably generated not in Revit, even though it has the measurements and all the objects. But if you see now that I measure freely, I have the option at the bottom to measure. I can drag. Now I have the measurements missing by 1 millimeter in this case. I was rushing a little bit with the drawing, but you get the point. That what I did is now all my drawing, no matter where I measure, this drawing, specifically this one, is calibrated. Now, that's not the case for all the drawings. You might have to switch the scale accordingly. But again, 99% of the cases, if this drawing was created properly in Revit, for example, you won't have to worry about it. You can just measure freely. I'm going to do that in a moment with the 3D model. What I want to focus now is if the worst case scenario is that your drawing is not calibrated, you can always do that. There are other tools. In this case, the 3D navigation tools are not available, of course, because it's a 2D drawing. But the focus that I want to give right now is I want to work on this drawing. I want to start creating things in this drawing. And for that, I'm going to zoom in. You're going to have this mini map on top that is going to allow you to see where you are. This one, you can put it aside. That happens especially when you have large floor plans where you're navigating, let's say, an office building, something like that, from one place to another, and you forget where you are. This one is very simple because all we have is a roof plan and some landscape. It's almost impossible to get lost. But what I can do here is now where I kick in the creative aspect is I start working with the drawing, with the shapes, with the text, cloud tools, call outs. These are the main tools. I can create a polygon, and I'll talk about this in a moment, issues and photos. So with drawing, of course, very simple. You can highlight things, right? You can draw objects. You can draw, in this case, it's freehand lines. But what I want to do here is I want to create a rectangle. So follow me here, please, okay? And now that I have this rectangle, I can modify it. I can move it, right? I can go to now. I can go and click on it again, right? And I can edit it. And I go to editing, I have all these tools here where I can change the color of the edge, where I can change the opacity of the line, when I can change the thickness of the line, right? When I can add a color with certain level of transparency, right? Now, this is just a rectangle. So let's say I'm suggesting they want to build a swimming pool. They already told me the measurements of the swimming pool, right? So I'm going to edit it. I'm going to leave it the way it is. Maybe I can make it a little bit smaller, right? And then I can add the text here that says, let me just go back to where it was. Now, if you notice the text is similar to when you're working on PowerPoint, where the text is going to have a border color, a background color, right? So I'm going to change the text that says suggested location for pool. And then I'm going to change the color of the text. I'm going to change the size of the text, right? I'm going to eliminate the border of the rectangle, right? And again, you're gonna see a similar situation, like what you notice when you're working, for example, in, again, I guess PowerPoint is the best example, right? Where all the shapes that you're creating, and I guess many of you probably are used to working with PowerPoint to create notes on an object. So now I'm going to take the pool, put it down here, right? And there you go. So I can say, okay, this is the suggested location for the pool. And I've seen examples, and because it is time consuming, I cannot just go through all of it, where the architect actually goes and designs on top of the drawing using all these tools. Now, that is not the purpose of the tool. For that, we have AutoCAD, we have Revit, where you can actually design, but you can start working on more creative approaches. For example, you can say, okay, I'm going to have this area as an area with trees, for example, right? You can use the multiple shapes to suggest, let's say, trees. In this case, I'm going to modify it. Once you create it, you click on it, you edit it, and then you can start modifying the colors. So let's see, I'm going to use green. And here I'm going to use green too. There you go. And you can take this and duplicate it. And let's say this is going to be the adding of trees, where you're going to suggest adding trees to the east facade. So you can use text again, or you can use a call out. And with the call out, again, by default, it's going to bring the same properties. Trees. And then I can just modify all these border color 0, the border color 0. The text is going to be green. And then the field is going to be none. So again, I modify actually everything in the color, but let's go and create a new one here. I can move it actually here, right? I'm going to change the line, and I don't want to dwell on this too much. There you go. Zoom in. And there you go. I created a call out for that. And again, this can be used either to generate suggestions, to generate reviews, to create actions. And in this case, when created actions, I could go on and on and on, making changes to this drawing, adding comments, modifying, including data. But one of the tools that is more practical in terms of managing information and generating new actions is with issues. Now, what issues are in ACC, for those who are not familiar, is you generate an action where you are highlighting a problem, right? And you're telling the person who generated this drawing, you're telling there is something going on. I need you to do something about it. So actually, I have a coworker who doesn't like the term issues. He likes to call it something like actions to be taken, something like that, because issues are not always something negative. Issues could be just the need for an action. So in this case, I'm going to quickly add an issue to this drawing, and you see how ACC allows you to select the type of issue. So in this case, I'm going to select an observation. So it's an observation. And I select where I want that observation to be. Let's say that observation is in terms of the location of the roof against the property line. So it's just too close to the property line. And I want to just highlight that I believe this could be taken into consideration. So Autodesk Construction Cloud, because I selected the type of issue, is going to write down OBS as observation. And it's going to tell me there is something here. The person who comes and sees this drawing is not only going to see my design notes, right? Trees, just location for the pool, highlighting here the 4,000 milliliters line, etc. I can even delete a markup that I don't like. Actually, I don't like these markups. I need to delete them. But when I go to an issue, I can detail on that issue and I can take actions. I can rename it. I can change the status to something that is pending, is in review, is closed. And again, this is because the issue is calling other people to take action on it. I can add detail, and I can say a roof line to close to property line, right? So it's just an observation. I'm not saying there is something wrong about it. I'm not saying I want something to be changed. It's just an observation. If eventually someone comes to the project and says, Charles, but you didn't say anything about it. I said, no, I did. I created an issue. It was an observation. And I asked my coworker, Rahul, to be a watcher. That means, if you don't know what that means, you put your mouse on top of the information logo, and it says that the watcher is going to be a person who is not expected to do anything. It's just a person that is aware of that. So again, the topic for today is not issues. I wish we had more time to focus on it, but it's a very extensive topic. What I wanted to tell you here is how I can combine my markup tools to expand into other review tools like issues. So I'm going to say, okay, I want Rahul to be a watcher, and I can start adding information. I can even say, I want this to be reviewed. I want this to be done by the 31st of January, by this week. And again, the beauty here is also, you could add images of references. And when you add a reference, that reference could be any data inside the project. So RFIs, access, submittals, a form set, etc. You can go and bring a photo, right, from the project itself. If you don't have that photo, you can go and navigate in your computer, right, and bring that photo and add it to your drawing review, let's say. So I'm going to add a random photo of a background, right? Just to show you what happens when you add a photo. Now, this tool is very useful. If you have in your hands an iPad Pro and you're on site and you're doing this type of markers, which with an iPad Pro and a stylus are very, very nice to do. You can take a picture on the spot, right? And then add that photo. So this is my photo, right? I already added a photo to the issue. And you can keep building and building on the issues. So when someone opens your drawing, they're going to find all these sets of information that are going to be part of your review. If you want to, you can add a photo directly to by clicking here. You select where the photo is going to be. I'm going to select this corner, right? And then the logo is going to be there. Then I can navigate and find the photo, right? I can go and add the photo. I'm going to upload the same photo that I had a moment ago, just to show you what happens, right? It could be a photo taken on site. This is just a wallpaper to illustrate because the green makes it easy to read it. And there you are. So you can have photos in your review, and when you click on it, photo is going to appear there. And again, on and on and on and on. And to wrap up, because I want to have some minutes for questions. If you notice, when I do a markup, when I do something, I have the option to publish it. And it's that little crown that I mentioned a moment ago. So if you notice in this drawing, I have multiple notes. I have rectangles, I have issues, I have drawings, but I'm going to take only these circles, shift and select them. And I'm going to publish them, only the 3 of them. So I have 3 drawings published, 3 markups published. I'm going to close the drawing. And now when I go to my folder, I'm going to refresh this. You're going to notice that this drawing now has markups. It says it has 11 unpublished markups that only I can see that are private. That allows you to work on that drawing before people can see what you're doing. And I have 3 markups that are published. If I wanted, I can also display if I have issues or not, etc., etc. Again, this is a tool that is very powerful. I wanted to give you some context. You could do exactly the same when it comes to 3D drawings. You can navigate those 3D drawings. You can extract information from those 3D drawings. If you notice here, because this is a scale from Revit, I can just measure directly. And the difference is because the drawing from a moment ago was export and give it to me as a PDF. I need to calibrate it first. And also each page has different scales. But this one is generated directly from Revit and it's been given to me in its original form. So I can, exactly just like I did a moment ago, I can create an issue. I can navigate this, etc., etc. It's just one of the many advantages of being able to see this information in Autodesk Construction Cloud. I'm gonna stop here and see if there are any questions. I know there is a question about bringing this question here, bringing area photos into the projects and managing the large reference files. Again, you could bring all types of information. You can even compare to drawings and make notes of those drawings if you want to. There are many options depending on the nature of your files. What I'm showing you here is the most basic approach, which is pretty much a native file from Revit, where I have a lot of control over the data. Sometimes that is not the case. We are very close to the end of the session, so I would like to know if there are any questions from the people attending the call. You can use the chat. Or you can, I don't know if you're allowed to unmute yourself. But you can also, I guess if you cannot unmute, you can use the chat. So I'm gonna give you 1 minute to share your questions. You have any? Okay, the chat has been disabled. All right. There is a Q&A box here. Okay. All right. So question and answer. Okay. So there's a Q&A box, sorry, not the chat. You can ask questions there. So Harry, does this kind of answer your question? I'll be happy. You can reach out to me later on. I'll be happy to review your sample for the Civil 3D. Civil 3D itself has a different, you know this well, right? It has a different user interface. It has a different approach to Revit. A lot of things happen in 2D, in Civil 3D. But if you export, for example, your Civil 3D to PDF, you get the same experience that I showed a moment ago. If you open your DWG, you can navigate that drawing here. So you don't need to worry about having any issues because it's a native format from Autodesk. You can navigate it here as nothing. And it's also a good way to share your data. About the photos, I have worked with photos. That's what I showed a moment ago. You can open the photo, you can include them. It wouldn't be an issue, but I know that some area photos are very large. I worked with that in the past. So you will have to have a reference how big those photos are and give it a try. But please reach out to us if we can help you with something, maybe provide some more data about the size of your photos, and we'll be happy to help you. If anyone else has any other questions, if not, I'd like to just close with this. Again, this is a very extensive tool. As I showed a moment ago, the files are going to be here in your project. They are very safe. Markup to scale. Yes, markup to scale. Well, everything should be at scale. So going back to my 2D drawing from a moment ago, so when you create a markup here, what's going to happen is everything in your drawing is going to be according to that scale. It's like if you're literally drawing on top of that. So let me see if I have an example, maybe not here, consume 001. So when I open this drawing, and actually this is a very challenging drawing. That's what I really like it, because you have perspective, you have 3D views, right? My recommendation is, I didn't want to give you a perfect scenario. So my recommendation is, if you notice here, this drawing is not at scale, right? If I go and measure it, because of this new sheet, it's not going to let me measure it until I establish the settings, right? but most important, I calibrate that drawing. Once I calibrate that drawing, it's gonna apply to this sheet, right? So I'm just gonna use the 2-point calibration very quickly, right? And I'll give it, so once I finish the 2-point calibration is going to be applying it to this one. You remember in my previous drawing, I already ran the calibration here, right? So I already did the calibration here, but it still asked me the calibration for the other drawings. This swimming pool that I draw very poorly here, if you go and measure, you're gonna be able to measure it. Okay. Or you can go and click on the properties of the drawing, but I need to calibrate it again. It's asking to calibrate it. But everything that is being drawn here, everything that I have here is going to be at scale. Everything you do here is going to be like drawing on a CAD drawing. So it is a great question, but only if you are drawing. Like if I'm going to create a new element here, right? And I want it at scale, I want this to follow a scale, I can do that. It's going to follow the scale. It's going to have a proportion with the rest of the drawing. It doesn't change. If you notice, it doesn't change in sizes. But I will recommend that only if you are drawing actively on your PDF. Otherwise, if you're creating an annotation, if you're creating a cloud revision, you will have to do it based on what you have here, how much space. For example, I probably will use all the space that I have here. I'm going to create a cloud. I'll use all the space that I have here to create all my annotations for this drawing. So the drawing becomes clear and it doesn't become too heavy. And I avoid, but again, these are practices. I will avoid having annotations on top of this because this drawing is already very messy, has a lot of information. I will probably create all my annotations here, right? Blah, 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 right? So you will go, all your annotation, all your comments will go here, and then you can create a call out, right? But that's you playing with the space that you have. If you're going to actively design or you're going to highlight something, then you do it on top of the drawing and you start just doing everything accordingly with the scale of the drawing. So yeah, the question is yes, you can do that. But again, you need to be strategical with how you organize your markups and which one you're going to publish, which one not. You can always delete them too. So I hope this was valuable to all of you. Please reach out if you have any questions. We didn't go with a very extensive introduction to ACC. I'm expecting all of you to know a little bit about it. And the focus was going to just show you what you could do with annotations in ACC. And again, this is something that I could share with anyone in the project. And I could do a lot of other things with these tools from here. So thank you everyone for being here. We do appreciate your attendance. We have a few more questions, okay? Network architecture type thing. We're gonna go to this question, then we're gonna wrap up. This was done, okay. Child disable, visual 3D done. It's probably more a network architecture type thing, and impact loss on aerial pictures would have on a cloud product. Yes, definitely, yes, that's true. Please feel free to reach out, Harry. We will be happy to help you. Again, it will depend on the size of the images. Hope this works for you. Again, explore the tool if you can, and reach out if we can help you with something else. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.